So the reason why it's so important for you and helpful to you to learn MBTI, which stands for Myers-Briggs Typology Indicator, which is based on the Jungian cognitive functions. It's because the top two functions really have a lot to do with how you're going to walk through life. And if you look at the top two functions, and which comes first and which comes second, which is what the Jungian psychology really focused on, that's going to give you 16 different types of people. And it has everything to do with how that person's going to see the world and look at the world. I didn't have any clue it was coming my way. And basically I had an F personality type person that I had been working with for 2 or 3 years. They got into a position of leadership in the lab and started being the one who determined what the rest of us were doing. And I was shocked and amazed at how his direction of what I should do next completely wasted the talent that I was giving to the company. It was a waste of the company's resources. Rather than being a senior electronics technician, I might as well have been a level 2 soldering and just simple troubleshooting. And I thought to myself, why would he be wasting my talent this way? Meanwhile, he, on the other hand, being an F personality type and me having my F at the bottom of my 4 top cognitive functions, I dealt with feelings like they were fairly irrelevant, don't let them get in the way, whereas feeling for him was his first top concern. And so I automatically interacted with him in such a way that kind of upsets him. And I kind of knew that. I didn't think it was any big deal though. But as things got worse in the whole situation, I thought to myself, he doesn't even know who I am. He's worked with me for 3 years. He doesn't know how I do my job. He doesn't know my motivations. I thought, if he's not going to figure me out in 3 years, I don't think he ever will figure me out. But if I'm going to be honest, the fact is, he didn't know who I was, but I didn't know who he was. I had no clue. I had been sitting next to him for 3 years, and he wasn't noticing how I did my job, how I got things done, how I solved problems. It was amazing. And so that's when it was after this had occurred. This was about 2 years ago. I thought, I need to learn this. My wife, who's as an INTJ, she's a fabulous researcher, and she comes up with all sorts of great little tidbits of knowledge here and there, to which the INTP, when I get data and information, I analyze it over and over and over again. So it's just a joy to have my sweetie INTJ around, bringing me new stuff to work my first function on. And so I had heard of the MBTI, and I thought that this problem I was having with this person could at least be understood through this personality system, and I started trying to learn it more. And I ended up finding out the personality type of this person, and when I read it, I was just like, oh, poor guy. For me, it was kind of like bad news when I read what their cognitive functions were and how they would end up affecting them and how their outlook on life was. They, on the other hand, would be quite happy to see what it was because it matched exactly what they thought was important.
Yeah, and it matched exactly what they valued.
What they thought was important, the way they wanted to see things, so they could read their cognitive functions and the description of how they would, as a matter of nature, be, and it would be fine. I read it, and I just felt sorry for them. And, well, the thing is that I didn't know who he was. And as I started to learn the MBTI, I understood it more and more and more. And I'll tell you what, the reason I decided I had to learn this stuff was because the personality type this person was feeling was the very first thing in their function. They did it all day long. But they were a J personality type. You've got P, which means perceiving, and J, which means judging, and that's the difference between my wife and I. And by the way, when you get those two together, a lot of times they can help each other because they're both seeing what's important from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I thought, but basically, one of the things in the description of this personality type is they like to get in charge and have management positions if possible. And I thought, wow, the chances of me running into this problem again are kind of high. I'm going to at least see it coming. Even if there's nothing I can do about it, I'm going to at least see it coming this time. I'm not going to be guilty of what I thought was so messed up about them, which is they had no idea who I was as a person. And so therefore, how can they be managing me effectively? Well, now I'm going to understand the people. As an INTP, I don't really like to take charge, and I like to have good management over me. And now I'm going to be able to evaluate the management, possibly before I even take a job, and determine if it's a job I should take based on the person who will be managing me and how good of a job I expect they could possibly do with my type. Because the really bad part about me and this person was, as I looked back through life and I understood this personality typing system, I was able to identify the people I had known in my life earlier, and I get along with almost everybody, but there's a few people who it's been nothing but a train wreck, and there was nothing I could do about it. No matter how much I wished I couldn't solve the problem. And that is the situation with me and this personality type. Because I see deferring to feelings and playing a feelings game with people, and that's what I would call it, a feelings game, is inauthentic and problematic, causes problems. And so when I go in, if there's a problem that needs to be solved, I will solve it by engaging my first function, which is logic and thinking. And that's how I'm going to solve it. And I'm going to try to push the feelings to the side because I want a clear answer. I want an answer that's been fogged up by feelings. But this person's the exact opposite way. When there's a problem, they're going to go to their feelings first, and the last function they have is thinking. And so I'm automatically going to rub them in the wrong way. Let's say that you're managing a company and you've got some people around you that seem to be doing decent work and all. By learning the MBTI, your management skills could go way up, because you might find out that you've got an INTP like me working for you. Well, INTPs typically do not say all the things they've thought of. They're thinking all the time. That's what they do. And so they're thinking about how to solve problems whether they're asked to or not. Now, they can be asked to solve certain problems, and that's what they'll think about. But if you're not asking them to specifically, if you're not giving enough think time, they'll come up with their own stuff to solve. But a smart manager who has an INTP will ask that INTP present certain problems he's trying to solve, and then he'll go present that information to the INTP and ask that INTP what they think. And they might want them to give it 24 hours and then come back in and say, okay, so what do you think? And they will get some really good answers, innovative answers, answers that will solve the problem, stuff that people haven't necessarily thought of before.
You know, also MBTI, knowing yours and your spouse's MBTI type is very helpful. You know, learning that he's an INTP and I'm an INTJ, we also found out, well, INTPs are indirect. INTJs are direct.
And this is in our communications.
Yes.
When I ask my wife a question, like, how do I look in this outfit, she will tell me, oh, that's awful. If it is awful. Well, you know what? I need to know that because I'm about to go to possibly a business meeting where I need to put on a presentation. Maybe I should not be distracting people with something awful to wear. I want something benign that's not like drawing their attention away.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then when she asks me something, I'm probably going to give an answer that is, because of my FE, fourth position, I try to give answers, I try to not be bossy. That's another thing about an INTP. If you are a manager of a group of people and there's one person seems to be coming up with stuff all the time that's really innovative, they have answers, they're good, and they happen to be an INTP and you're thinking of making the management of the department, think twice. Now, depending on their nurture, they might actually be good at it. But there's a good chance that they want to have nothing to do with that. I don't like, and I don't think the guys I've met who are INTPs liked bossing people around, telling people what to do, worrying about timelines. That is not our thing.
That's my thing.
Yeah, that's a J person's thing.
I like timelines and I like managerial positions.
Yeah, so that's another reason that as a manager, you start to know this, you can figure out how to put your people in their best spots. You can also understand how to nurture some of the people that are under you. It's like, wow, this person actually has a fabulous memory. I'm not leveraging that well enough. If I've been giving this person in here in my department, and they're both really in the same lab, but I've been having this guy do something that's really more memory intensive, that's the guy who's good at it. But he's an introvert, and I didn't really know because he doesn't speak up all that much. So I'm telling you, what I really loved about understanding and learning about this science even existed was the personality wildcard has always been, to me, an unsolvable problem with my TI. And it's been an unsolvable problem because half the personality types are F. And they're not really going to make sense as far as I'm concerned most of the time. Now, there's a few F personality types that are pretty sharp. And I mean, an INFJ, I think, an INFJ.
A mature INFJ who has developed their tertiary or third position TI can be pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I think one of them was the ones who helped solve and mature the MBTI science. And one of the Myers-Briggs was an INFJ. Is that right?
Yeah, if I recall.
These people, they score well on IQ tests, and they are good. So I probably wouldn't have a problem with one of them, but the ones I was having problems with were probably Fs. And when I read about my personality types, it said that I do not like a bunch of emotional outbursts jamming up my logical machine, and I'd say that was pretty much true. But for me, the personality situation was something that I couldn't really get a grasp on. But as a P personality type, I'm willing to just roll with things most of the time. But understanding this has given me a whole new confidence as I walk through life. I'm able to meet people, and as somebody with FE, where I'm concerned with how I'm affecting others, I now can say, wow, this person is a high F person, and especially if they're FE first position, which are the people I have trouble with, I'm going to know what to stay away from. I might actually have a chance of not causing a problem where they don't like me. And it's probably going to involve me trying not to interact with them all that much, because then I don't have to be very inauthentic. But I'll at least know that their fourth function, which is thinking logically, that if I start pushing them there, because that's what I'll just naturally do, and I start discussing something, I'm going to be discussing the logic and rationale. When I start interacting with these people and start discussing the logic and reason for something, I'm going to be pushing them into what's called their inferior function. And if they're an immature personality type who still fears their fourth function and what it has to represent, I'm going to automatically be making them very nervous. And since they're going to react with feelings first, that's going to probably give a reaction that I'm probably not going to be interested in. So I can try not to go there. You know, it's a much better. And then I also can, if I'm working with a personality type, like I would love to have an INTJ manager, and I have one right now at my current job. And INTJs, it's kind of unfair, but a lot of the personality types just naturally don't like them because they're so direct, and they are very confident about the answers they've come up with, and it's not because they're winging it. No. INTJs are masters of figuring stuff out and learning it.
Yeah, INTJs are called the masterminds, and I think one of the reasons being is, as I know I have experienced this, if there's something that we're given to research or something that we're driven to learn, we can master it in an uncannily short amount of time.
Yes, Abernathy, Catch Me If You Can, that guy was an INTJ, and when his family life went sour on him, and I think it was before he was 18 years old, he left the house. And he figured out how to forge checks, and he through his check forging years, as the FBI tried to track him down, he had become a doctor and a lawyer, and he was actually doing those things that he just studied up on it in his spare time so that he could pull himself up, you know.
And he pulled it off.
Yeah, and he pulled it off, and he actually was helping people and doing things. He was being effective in those roles. So,
that's where it's nice to have a proper moral compass for that tertiary FI, which of course would be the Bible.
His FI had been somewhat compromised, probably by the stormy relationship of his parents, which I think it was the breakup that drove him out of the house.
He did not have a good moral compass there. Yeah.
But the INTJs are one of the most disliked of all the personality types, and that's very unfair, I think. And the bad part is that they are almost always, when they open their mouth, trying to be helpful.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's, our extroverted function as INTJs is extroverted thinking. So we are either soaking in information or trying to put information out there. That is how we interact. If you want to know how to interact with an INTJ. We interact in information. You give us valuable, viable information, and we want to give you information back.
Okay, so I've been referring to it as MBTI and Jungian psychology, and the reason is because Carl Jung really focused on the top two functions, and they really have a lot to do with how you're going to be. But the second two functions make a big difference in how you look at the world. If I only focused on the top two functions, I would know that I was TI and NE, but it wouldn't necessarily be able to predict ahead of time that I'm FE. And when I think about feelings, I think about the feelings in the room. I think about the mood of the room and how I'm affecting other people. Whereas Candy's FI, her third function, she's aware of her feelings and is not necessarily aware of the feelings in the room, which is another reason why INTJs are going to say it like it is.
Yeah, that's another reason why INTJs could be construed as socially inept, because we're not necessarily picking up on the feelings of the room. And even if we are picking up on signals or vibes or whatnot, we're not necessarily caring.
This video has a lot to do with why it's important to go ahead and learn this stuff. And really what it comes down to is once you understand these things, it can really help you find the right person to marry. When you have children, it can really help you know how to nurture your children better.
If you know your MBTI types of your children, you know more what you need to do to get through to them and how to train them up.
Yes, I could have pegged my oldest son as an ESTJ probably by the time he was 5 years old. And that would have, by the way, had I known this back then, it would have helped. It would help me raise him. I have an INTP son, my second oldest, just like I am. And had I understood he was an INTP, I would have understood better how to nurture that, how to help him develop his TI, his logic capability, help him develop his second function, which is NE, which he uses to be responsible, and that's the ability to predict events as they may unfold, and how to learn from what he sees as patterns in the world.
And then our third born is an ISTJ, and brain development wise, and this is trivium speak for those homeschoolers, because I homeschool my children via the trivium, his brain is developing into the rhetoric stage. Well, since I know he's an ISTJ and I'm an INTJ, and we both have our second function being extroverted thinking, I am able to work with him on rhetoric as he's developing the rhetoric stage of his brain, both of us being secondary TE.
Yes.
And then our youngest is an ENTP. And ENTPs and INTJs are hilarious together.
Yes.
They like to do fun, playful banter, and we will go back and forth with the most wittiest, funniest jokes.
Yes, a little warning to everyone out there who's going to bother to learn this, this cognitive stacking system, this Jungian cognitive stacking function. Anybody with N in the first position, pesty.
Yes. ENTPs, ENFPs.
INTJs, INFJs.
Yeah, INFJs could be too.
You know, they might be the least pesty of the high ends because their FE parent is probably making them not want to be, you know, ruffling feathers. But it's there, it's bubbling. They might be holding it back, but it's bubbling.
You gotta get it out of them after they're comfortable with you.
Yes, yes, you'll find out that they're pesty once they're comfortable.
And that's the thing too with me as an INTJ, you know, if I'm in a room with a whole bunch of people, for example at church, I'm generally going to be very quiet and very introverted. Now, you want to go out to lunch with me after church and hang out and talk at McDonald's around the table, my funny side is eventually going to be leaking out. Yeah,
my daughter and my wife, they just have all sorts of fun because it's NE, NI, and they are getting it. It's the back and forth.
It's pretty funny. And that's what happens. You get an ENTP and an INTJ together, they just bounce and feed off of each other, and it's pretty hilarious.
Well, what's kind of funny is INTJ
is my daughter's
is my daughter's subconscious, and ENTP, my daughter's ego, is her subconscious. And so they're kind of bouncing subconscious and egos back and forth off of each other. It's really cool. But the reason this is kind of important like this is because you can find out ahead of time whether or not you're actually going against the tide in a relationship situation. My wife and I have only really known about this, studied the science for about the last 2 years. But it turns out that INTP and INTJ relationships are like a match made in heaven. I mean, you can, she is literally my other half. You know, I've got TI, she has TE. I have FE, she has FI. I have NE, she has NI. I have SI, she has SE. And really, she brings to the table all of the pieces of the puzzle that I'm not necessarily good at, and vice versa. But when you know the MBTI, and this is the really important part about it, because I'm a P and she's a J, and by the way, that's how you get a really good match with somebody, I think, most of the time. You keep the first 3 letters the same, but you swap that last letter. But when you do that, you're going to get a J with a P. And so what you have to watch out for is my wife's J is very organized, things are neat and tidy. I'm a P type, things are kind of like how they are.
Messy.
Yeah, you might call it messy.
I might.
You know, she's on time, I'd probably be late, that kind of thing. And so what's important is, a lot of people might look at a spouse and say, well, they've got to be neat and tidy like I am. And they have to be on time like I am.
You know, if I married another INTJ...
Yes, if Candy was with another J personality type, where things had to be a certain way, well, chances of everything, as far as she's concerned, correct, chances of that are kind of low. Now, of course, anybody can learn to work with each other and get used to things over time. As a matter of fact, that's going to have to happen in any
relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I've had to learn to concede some of my J to his P, and he's had to learn to concede some of his P to my J, but that's helped each of us grow and develop further.
Yeah, the fact is, I like a nice, neat, and tidy house. I probably wouldn't have it there right now if it was just me by myself, but my wife does have it there, and it's very nice to come home to. And so when she, you know, doesn't really like it if I leave, say, a drawer open, because I just know I'm going to be back there in a little while anyway, or let's say some cabinet doors that slide, I might leave those open.
Or he leaves projects out in the living room for
I might leave something on the kitchen table. Yeah, if she cleans that up, I don't do this, oh, you just messed up the thing I was working on, now I'm going to have to get it all out again. No. I appreciate the J she brings to my life. She gave me a little bit of time to finish it. I didn't get around to it fast enough. It needed to be cleaned up. I'm just going with it. And so when you understand these cognitive stackings and what they bring to the table and how she is helping me in so many other ways, the fact that I'm probably going to have to break something back out again since she cleaned it up, because frankly I left it out too long. Really, I mean I did. I'm not going to have a problem with that. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I'm not going to mess the relationship up because of it. I'm not going to think she has to start acting more like I act on that, because I'm actually appreciating the way that she's acting on that.
See, and that's another way that's awesome to know about each other's MBTI types. Like I mentioned earlier, he is indirect and I am direct. And now that we know these differences, I know when he's hinting at something, instead of just coming straight out and saying it, that's because he's trying not to be bossy and he's trying to be nice. And he knows when I am directly saying something, I'm not trying to be rude, I'm trying to be very efficient and clear and accurate, yes.
And I love that. You know, one of the reasons we're together is because when I met her, I used to say to myself, and this is more of a 1970s, 1980s way to talk about relationships. I used to hear people say, oh, I don't want a girl that plays games, you know. And then I'd go watch them be in a relationship like, they want a girl that plays games. But you know what? I don't want a girl that plays games. If I meet a girl and she says something, I want her to, when she says it, I want that to be that. I don't want it to be something else.
Like for example, if our anniversary's coming up and I want flowers, I'm not going to go, gee, flowers sure would be nice. I'm going to say, get me flowers for our anniversary.
Or even more hinty than that, because I'm the more hintier one, because that's my personality type. She might say, oh, so-and-so's husband bought some really nice flowers for her on their anniversary, and I would just maybe think to myself, well, that's nice.
Yeah,
but
I wouldn't take that as a hint either. I'd be like, okay, why'd you tell me that?
Yeah, so what else about the price of rice in China, you know?
Yeah.
So, but here's the really funny part about it to me on this specific subject. I like Candy's directness. I love it when people are direct with me, because as an INTP, I'm a responder. You tell me the problem you want solved, you tell me what the situation is, fabulous. I can work with that. And so I like directness. But you know what? That's not what I provide other people. There's a little bit double standard there. Candy's been having to deal with my indirectness for years, and as an Aspie, it's double problematic for her because she's not so good at picking up hints.
But at least now I know it's in his cognitive stacking, that's in his nature to do.
Yeah, and because I do know about this cognitive situation, and by the way, that's another thing that just proves to me how this science is so accurate. INTPs are indirect. You know what? Gosh darn it, I'm indirect. And when I learned about this, I realized all the more, wow, I do not provide her what I request, which is directness. Be straight with me. Right to the point if possible. Let's make it quick, and then I'll move right on and I'll start working on the problem or whatever. And then I realized, as they said, I was indirect, and I'm like, you know what, I am. I didn't even realize about myself. Learning the MBTI helped me along the path of know thyself. And you know what? Since I see the bonus of being direct, and I have a natural propensity to be indirect, like we're out of milk, and I say, we're out of milk, rather than, hey Candy, I need you to pick up some milk, because she goes to the store. Now that I know I'm indirect, I can try to be a little more direct. I can try to actually provide for people that which I consider to be helpful.
And now, meanwhile, that I know indirectness is just in his INTP nature, I know it's not an annoying, purposeful thing. That is him trying to be nice and trying to, make me comfortable.
Yeah, and since INTJs are some of the most autonomous of all the types,
the most independent of them all.
I was accidentally, and this is why we are a natural match. I was naturally, not accidentally, naturally not being bossy to her the whole time we've been together. So for 2 years we've known about the MBTI, and it turns out that INTJ and INTP is one of the matches made in heaven. It's one of the perfect matches out there. It is one of the matches. If you start reading about this stuff on the internet, you'll find out that that is one that people actually look for. You see, if you take the first 3 letters and you swap the last letter with an S personality type, they may not quite get along as well as us N's, because the N softens some of the aspects of the personality type. An SJ, she's an NJ. An SJ is going to be a little bit more like, this is how the way things have to be. An SP are a little bit more like, wait a minute, I got to have my freedom here. So an ISTP, ISTJ relationship has a chance of being more rocky. Although they'll really connect on a lot of ways, and they would be good with each other, but they have a little bit more chance of irking each other more. Hey, if they learn the MBTI, they'll understand that, and they can put that behind them a lot better. That's another reason to know it.
Yeah.
So Candy and I've only known about this for 2 years, and it turns out here we are, one of these match made in heaven matchups. Well, for one thing, as Christians, God is helping us. But the other thing is, what I used to say about women was, well, I wouldn't mind being in a relationship, but it's too much trouble. Well, 75% of the women, according to estimates, are F personality types out there, and I just am not interested in dealing with that. I want to deal with somebody on the rationality and the logic, and if we're going to get all upset and have feelings going all crazy and everything, half the time for something that didn't even happen because there's a misunderstanding, but rather than go to the thinking and solve the misunderstanding and then realize that emotional outburst isn't even warranted in the first place. Well, I would just say to myself, I've got cars to work on, I've got projects to go do, forget this. And I just would, by the way, I used to just think, oh, the girl wants to break up, and so I would just do that. And so I naturally was not in a relationship most of the time, because most of the time if I was going to meet a girl, she was going to be an F. But when I met Candy, it was like, wow, she's really cool. She doesn't play games like I was talking about. And for me, I was not being bossy to her. She's an INTJ. She doesn't want to be bossed around. She doesn't want somebody telling her that they have to do this and they better be this way and stuff like that. And as a P personality type, I'm go with the flow. I'm like, whatever, it's like, oh, okay. And also, as an INTP, I'm always interested and curious to learn something new, to see a different point of view or perspective. And she brings that in. because she's a J personality type and she researches and she
And he
has all
likes
sorts
to
of data.
listen to my TE.
Yeah, when she TE, she starts speaking stuff that she's interested in and she's learning about. I'm getting stuff to work on with my TI. Oh, I love it. Fabulous. And so we just naturally got together. We were married 20
Almost
years.
23 years ago now.
Yeah, we were married 20 years before we found out about this science. And when we found out about the science, we found out that we were like perfect for each other. Well, you know what? I probably wouldn't have had it any other way. If I was with one of these other types where there would have been an actual problem with their nature and my nature, I would probably just like, oh, got cars to work on, got projects to go do.
And yeah,
Too much trouble.
If you're an INTJ looking for an INTP, you're probably going to have to find them and ask them out. INTJ is triple movement. We are goal oriented. We want to get stuff done. We don't like to ever just be idle. You know, even just watching TV for me sometimes can be quite a chore unless it's something that's educating me. INTP is not movement. They are control.
Yeah, or systematic.
Or systematic is another way to put it.
Another way to say it. So, Candy's, of the 4 sides of the mind, the cognitive stacks line up differently for each of those four sides. Mm-hmm. Ego being one of the 4 sides. Of the 4 sides, the first function in each of those different ways of lining the stacks up for my wife on 3 of the 4 is a movement, which is, we're going to get this done. Let's get going. Mine is triple systematic. Of my personality types, 3 of my 4 sides of the mind, I'm wanting to step back, assess the situation, and figure out the best route to go and analyze it.
Yeah, so for example, if we were going to pick out seats to sit down at a concert or a symphony or something and he didn't have assigned seats, I would just walk up to a seat, sit down, plant myself there and be done. He's gonna walk in there, look around.
No, I'm gonna probably, if I can, walk out to the field.
Oh no.
Or out to where, down to the bottom, and I'm gonna look all around and say, oh, that spot right up there. Can see down. Yeah, that's what we want right up there. And so, where this really helps us out in the relationship is, I might see 2 or 3 places that I think would be good, and I'm gonna start getting possibly stuck in analysis paralysis. That's what I've got to watch out for. I'm just sitting there not knowing which one to pick. But my wife, who might have just walked up to a seat and sat down, we might not have been in a very good seat at all if we just did that. So if she'll go with me down there and assess the situation, I might find maybe 5 places that look pretty good. I'm like, well, that looks pretty good, this looks pretty good, and that looks pretty good, but I'm not sure which one I want. She might go,
and I'll go, that one.
That one. I'm like, okay, that one. And that's kind of how we do things in the marriage. You know, I might find 2 or 3 things that I look back and say, well, that we could do this, this, or this, and it kind of like depends on what you consider most important, which one might be the best way to go. And I don't know what should.
But with me being triple movement and him being control, I asked him out, just like I did with pretty much all of my past relationships. I do the pursuing. I do the asking out because I'm triple movement. An INTJ girl is going to have a lot of trouble sitting on her hands waiting for a guy to approach her. She's just going to go and approach the guy she's interested in.
Yeah, so part of the reason we are together is, one, from my side, I just wasn't going to deal with these F personality types that are like going off the handle and stuff for half the time for what seemed to me wasn't even important and was possibly just a misconstruing of what was going on. And so I'm holding back, and also I'm introverted, so you got to watch out. These INTPs are not so easy to find. We're 3% of the personality.
They hide.
Of the people out there, and we're probably in our workshop working on an idea, or the typical, stereotypical thing in the basement on playing video games.
Which he did not do.
Which I didn't do. I always thought it was a waste of time. I always had gee, I've got to get something productive done. I can't just play
neither of us have ever been into video games. Me, it's the same thing. It's like, I'm not learning anything useful for my future playing a video game, so I'd much rather read a book.
Yes, which is a very TE thing to do, by the way, gather information. And from Candy's end, she wasn't going to probably end up with a at least P personality type, because she wasn't going to deal with their bossiness. If they were a J, there's a chance they're going to want things a certain way, and she was maybe not going to agree with them.
We would both think that we had the best way of doing something.
Best way to do something.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to kind of go with the flow. If my wife really wants to do something a certain way, even if it doesn't look like the best possible answer to me, I'll be like, well, you know, that looks interesting. I guess unless I try it, I don't know if it's a better way or not. Let's go for it. You know?
Yeah, look up the Shunammite woman in the Bible, and you have what's likely an INTJ wife with probably an INTP husband.
Yes, that is actually probably the cognitive stacking of that wife and husband. Candy, she's willing to ask people out, and she, being a natural intellectual, an NT personality type, if she hears that somebody is smart, she's like, ding, I'm interested in that guy.
Yeah, I was interested in him before I ever met him, because my best friend at the time knew him and was telling me about how smart he was and how he could do all this stuff with computers. My very first question then was, oh, is he married?
Yeah, so here I am kind of hidden away, but I have a few friends, and she has met them, and they said this guy is really smart. Now here's the thing, I have never really thought myself as being all that smart. I consider myself a little bit fairly clever, but I was never all that fast, I thought, at learning stuff in school.
Oh, I tested his IQ. He's pretty smart.
So I considered myself to be just as smart, or maybe not as smart, because I thought other people were a little faster than me picking stuff up in school and getting good grades and everything. And I just thought, well, but I did give myself this much. I said, well, I may not be all that smart. I may only be average in smarts, but I do keep thinking when a bunch of other people have turned that off. And so it's kind of tortoise in the hare. I'm going to come up with an answer by the next morning that they hadn't thought of.
Intelligence isn't academics or speed of learning. Intelligence is pattern recognition.
Pattern recognition.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. The IQ test looks for pattern recognition. And I am pretty good at that.
That's why IQ tests are so easy, because we pick up patterns.
Yeah, so these INTPs, they're tucked away in the basements or the shop working on their thing. They're introverted. They're not extroverts. They're not out there going to parties, meeting people and doing that kind of thing. But they probably have a few friends. And then Candy, on the other hand, being a natural intellectual, she hears from one of her friends that he knows somebody he considers to be smart. Because yeah, I've worked on his car and done some stuff, you know, with him, and in the car club, I was the guy who did a lot of the technical problem solving, because that's what I love to do.
You see, that was top 2 on my list for a future spouse, was smart and nice.
Yeah, and so she's interested just at the get-go, and so when she finally met me, I, being an introvert, I may have met 500 girls my whole life that I might have been interested in asking out, but I didn't do it. But Candy, see, she's triple movement. And so she's like, this guy's smart and triple movement. I'm not waiting for him to ask me out. I'm going to ask him out. And then when she asked me out, I was like, oh, okay, because I'm a go with the flow guy. And so, I mean, it was really, as long as we kind of got in the same room, it was somewhat natural that we would have gotten together. And all because of the MBTI, all because of the stacking.
Yeah, we are such on the same wavelength. We can really bounce off of each other, you know, especially with humor, or we will get in very deep conversations. I mean, if you're to be a fly on the wall and come in our conversations, you might be hearing us talking about, you know, Tesla and resonance theory and the ether and etheric beads and, you know, magnetic resonance. I mean, we're going to be talking about all this woo type of stuff.
Yeah, that's what's really cool about Candy. I actually have a wife, a girl. Because, I mean, if your typical F girl types are not going to be interested in science all that much. So I have an actual wife here who is interested in reading a book like Schrodinger's Cat.
Oh yeah, I read it 3 times.
Yeah.
And I read the second book.
And when I talk about these ideas and theories that I'm thinking about and doing, she's interested in hearing them. And she might even go look something up and bring something back to me, because she's a data digger. INTJs dig up data. She might go out and find something and bring it to me that's like, whoa, that's great, because I'm out working on my project.
I'm reading a fascinating book right now that I'm starting to bring some information to them. It's called Transcending the Speed of Light. And while I'm a Christian and that author is clearly not a Christian, there's so much great nuggets of information in there that really feeds my yearning for more information. I've been just highlighting passages in that book. It's been very interesting.
Some of the great joys in my life today, as far as intellectually thinking about certain things, are something that was brought to me by my INTJ wife. One of them being the electric universe. Wow! Cosmology based upon electromagnetic theory, and it actually matches what we see out there.
P.S. The picture of the black hole is not a black hole.
Yeah, that black hole out there. Yeah.
Plasmoid.
Plasmoid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a picture of a plasmoid, people, and the people who are in the electric universe have known about those for quite some time.
And you know, it's such a joy for me that I have a TI husband who wants information, who loves learning new things, because I have someone that I can tell all the stuff that I've researched too, and he listens and he is interested. You know, instead of sitting there going, "That's nice. What's for dinner? Let's put on the football game."
Yeah, yeah. TE, first or second position TE people, they actually, as they're forming the words to speak it, the thinking is occurring at that same time too.
I will be
and it
saying
helps
stuff,
them to codify.
Exactly. I'll be saying something out loud to him, maybe, you know, something in physics or quantum mechanics, that a theory that maybe I'm trying to understand or formulate, and I'll just start telling him about it. And then all of a sudden I will say the answer because I thought of it on the spot while I was saying it out loud.
She's formulating these thoughts as she's saying them based on all sorts of data and research. And at the same time now, she is providing me with something to cogitate on. I mean, it's like hand in glove. It is so cool. It's really great. And by the way, you should know that. People who watch my wife's videos, you should know that when she goes and she does those Bible studies, she doesn't write this stuff up ahead of time and spend 24 hours with notes and all. She's done the research already, but she's not trying to get notes and put thoughts together in sentences and try to figure out what she's going to say first and second. Her NI dominance, her ability to put things together in a logical way and think into the future helps her to think of the next word she needs to say as she's saying it. And as she's speaking in those videos, many times she is saying something that she has just thought of for the first time that has occurred to her from all of the knowledge she has currently gained.
Yes, I will watch back my Bible study videos. You know, after I've uploaded it, I'll watch it, make sure the upload is okay. And so many times I'll be like, wow, I didn't know that. But I said it, and I'll learn from my own videos because I'll see these things as I'm doing the study.
Yeah.
And I don't prepare for the studies. My preparations for the study is I read the chapter first, and then I turn on the camera and record.
And she starts going.
Yep. And I don't know what I'm going to say. It just flows.
And of course, part of that preparation is that when she reads the chapter, it's like it's more than 30 times since she's read the chapter because she's been through the entire Bible more than 30 times. And that's the background that
that's my Bible training. It's just that I've read the Bible over and over and over again since 1995. And I will continue to for the rest of my life.
And then she uses her dominant pattern recognition function and her thinking to formulate logical, rational conclusions that when if she says something that actually is a new revelation to her as she's making the video, when she's watching the video afterwards and editing it, if she didn't think it was right, it would get edited out. How many times have you edited something out that came to you as you were making the video? Almost never, right?
I would say that's a very rare occurrence. That doesn't usually happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys are getting cutting edge conclusions, truths that actually work, or they'd have been edited out, that for all we know, nobody else has ever said before. But on the other hand, there's been a lot of thinkers out there. Could have been said many times before, but maybe just not on a YouTube video, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So, well, at any rate, I would say that that this is a valid science to look into and would benefit anyone. It will benefit you in finding a good relationship. It will benefit you in educating your kids and making sure that even if you're going to have some program you want to put them in, that the program's appropriate. Double checking that whatever teachers they have are interacting with the child appropriately. I mean, when you were going to school, Candy time and again was being pulled aside by the teachers because they didn't think she was acting right. They asked her if she knew she was a girl, because she's a T
because,
personality type.
Yeah, I'm a T. I hung out with the boys. I didn't get along with the girls. I didn't act like the girls. And they would ask me the stupidest questions. Are you a girl or a boy? And I'd say, well, if that isn't obvious, I guess I've got a problem.
Yeah, the girls are having these F-type conversations, which meant nothing to Candy. It looked like a complete
I'm not
waste of time.
interested in gossip. I don't care who sings what song or who acts in what movie. And even now, I do have some female friends. I still have mostly male friends. But my female friends know that when they're heading off to the spa or to get their hair done or their nails done, don't bother calling me. I am not interested. Now, if you want to go to a Bible study conference, I'm there.
Or some scientific.
Oh, yeah.
Something with science. So, frankly, I think that any business school that is not teaching in management courses, when not teaching those people who are going to become managers about this science, they're behind.
This would have been amazing if I got this in college, because studying business management, and it would have been amazing if MBTI was included.
And business management, that's good for profits and everything, but wow, what about home management? How you interact with your wife, how you're going to interact with the children, how you're going to protect your children from the people they may meet in life who are going to be insulted by just because of the way they act. I mean, my son, who's an INTP, he's going to know now if he meets somebody, because he's very concerned with the effect he's having on other people. He meets one of these people who have FE first, and they get insulted with him being cognitive and trying to talk logically, and then that puts them into fear mode and makes them mad at him. He's going to be worried that he did something wrong. We will be able to talk. I'll say, John, you didn't do anything wrong. You just kind of, ruffled their feathers a little bit, And if they were more of a mature of that personality type, they would have been interested in your logical thinking and wanting to try to learn how you do it better.
That's one thing too. We've mentioned maturity in the personality types too. Introverted types, we tend to mature a bit more in our cognitive stacks or cognitive functions faster than extroverted types do. Because introverted types, we're always in our heads, but we still have to extrovert from time to time. And so that means we have to go into our second function to extrovert. So I extrovert in TE, he extroverts in NE. But those are our second functions. But someone who's already extroverted, for example, if you have an ENTJ, well, their first function is TE. So their main function, their main thinking function, they're both the first function. So for them to even start really developing and using their second function strongly, they kind of have to have some time alone.
Yeah, they're going to want to, as an extrovert, they want to go out. They're going to want to be with people. They're going to want to interact with people. Now, you could say that they're going to have alone time somewhere along the line, but they can always turn that off. Just because somebody's alone doesn't mean they're using their cognitive function that's associated with being introverted at the time.
Yeah, if you're alone and you're an extrovert and you're alone, but you're just immersing yourself in reality TV or in social media, you're not really alone.
Yeah, you're still kind of extroverting. You're not necessarily, in the case of an ENTJ, you're not necessarily future thinking to yourself. Now, I think an ENTJ a lot of times will, especially by the time they hit the teenage years. They'll start future thinking because these people tend to get into good.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more with, for example, FE heroes.
Yes.
Because they're all about the feel of everybody around.
So Candy believes that the extroverted personality types can stay a little bit less developed on their parent function because they don't necessarily have to go there. On the other hand...
So they'll touch into it, but only here and there and minimally. But what they need to do is they need to go off someplace, maybe a cabin or something. They need to get away from social media. They need to not have, external forces and people bothering them, and they just need some time to introspect.
Yeah, whereas Candy, having her first function is NI, she can do that alone, quietly, with nobody around to deal with, to interact with. But when she walks out the door into the world, she is somewhat forced to think external and deal with the external world with her TE. And likewise, I am forced to recognize patterns that I see. Like if I'm driving the car, I'm going to recognize patterns that if you hit the brakes a certain amount while cornering, then you lose adhesion to the tire and you're going to spin the car out. I have to deal with that, you know. So let's quickly go over, as we conclude, what this video has kind of been about. The MBTI is actually the Myers-Briggs advancements of what's called Jungian, Carl Jung, psychology typology.
Typology, yeah.
The typology, the different personality types, which is a theory based on how you are wired neurologically at birth, your nature, how you're just naturally going to behave. And the reason that this is even worth looking into is because if you learn this well enough, you will actually be able to figure out what the cognitive stack is, and therefore the neurological wiring of the people you're interacting with. And when you know that, you know what not to do so that you don't insult them. You know how to interact with them to be effective. Like where the guy was FE first, I found out I got nowhere with him because he was now my manager. I got nowhere with him when I tried to tell him the logical reasons of why we should go down a certain road. But when I told him I didn't feel comfortable doing something a certain way, boom, I had his attention. And that was a valid way. The fact is I didn't feel comfortable going down that road. Because if we did it the way he wanted to do, I foresaw, based on my logic and reasoning, that the outcome was going to be bad. So when I told him I didn't feel comfortable going there, really? Now he actually wants to help me. These people actually want to help you be successful. And so if I realized that about him, but I realized I need to come with reasons through feelings of why we need to go there,
Yeah.
as long as I wasn't trying to manipulate him in some unfair way and I was actually using feelings to express what I had logically deduced, there's nothing uncool about that. And it would have made everything work better.
Yeah, or vice versa. What if he knew MBTI and he had typed Eric properly as INTP, then he'd know that if he needed to get through to Eric, then you have to apply to him with logic because he is TI first. So you can't appeal to him with, well, I'm not really comfortable with this makes me feel bad. You're going to need to apply him with, 1 + 1 = 2.
And even more than that, him having TI as his last/inferior function, had he learned MBTI and realized that he had an INTP in his staff, he could have leaned on me for my TI. That's his weak function. He could have said, I've thought about this and I think this is the right answer. He could have said, what do you think? And he could have taken my answers to the bank. And I would have told him why I think that. And I could have helped him develop his inferior function. And he would have been all the stronger. Because the fact is, an ENFJ, if they'll train their second function, the NI, on some of the correct patterns to recognize with logic, his parent function he could become very powerful and very skilled if he'll stop fearing that logic and instead embrace it.